Hi everyone, Kimberly here, just addressing another question. How did I end up doing what I'm doing? How did I end up doing what I'm doing? Well, I went through my own spiritual awakening about 12 years ago, and I became very ill actually as a result of that because I didn't know what was going on at the time. I had full psychic awakening almost overnight. It was completely overwhelming and terrifying, and there wasn't much information out there about awakening in a modern Western context. So yeah, it caused me a lot of stress. It was really hard, and I became seriously ill. I became physically disabled for a period of time. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia back in 2000. Hardly left the house. I was, in bed a lot, and my body hurt. I was exhausted, and nothing was helping. Nothing was working. And I came from a very stoical family, so I think a lot of people didn't realise how ill I was and how bad I felt because I really pushed myself to keep going, and of course that was the worst thing I could have done at the time. My body needed me to stop and it needed me to listen. Eventually I did, and I was flicking through a magazine and I came across someone who was a Reiki healer who happened to live around the corner. And I was living in a new area of Bristol in the UK at the time. I didn't really know anyone, but I knew that this road was fairly close by. And I thought, okay, that feels accessible. That feels like something I could do. So I contacted this lady and started having a series of Reiki healings. And actually, it was after my very first Reiki session. And now I had had spiritual healing some years before, but this was my first Reiki session. And I slept properly for the first time in about 8 months, and I slept for 18 hours, and I woke up and I just felt like I'd turned a corner. It felt transformational for me, and of course I realised in hindsight I was so depleted, my life force was so depleted, I'd been pushing myself so hard and been through such trauma with my mother's death and the years of her illness that I'd become very drained. So this Reiki session was a huge top up for me. And I just went on from strength to strength. The more Reiki sessions I received and the more healing I had, the stronger I got. And then amazing synchronicities started to happen. It's as if the Reiki reconnected me to the wonder and the magic and the interconnected nature of the universe. So I started having those things happen where you're drawn to the perfect books and you bump into people and amazing things happen, and synchronicities and meetings, and everything links up. And then I started training myself, and when a natural progression was for me to train as a Reiki healer, and so I did that and went through the various levels and took it very slowly and took it very carefully. I very much respected what I was being taught, and certainly very humble about the whole process of becoming a healer. And I realised very early on it's not something that you become simply because you've got a qualification. It takes a whole lifetime really to develop as a healer. So that's where I started really on the path of being a healer, and started bringing my intuitive knowing and insights into that, offering little bits of guidance and coaching. And it's a fairly long and windy road, but cutting a long story short, I ended up moving back to Devon in the UK, where all my family are from. Felt called home, felt called back home, and I ended up working part-time in a spiritual bookshop, and there happened to be a complementary therapy clinic upstairs, and I started to become friends with the therapists, and they encouraged me to, reconnect with my path as a healer and as a guide, and set up a practice. So with some help and just taking it one step at a time, just like one client a week. And I carried on working at the bookshop, and I transitioned gradually to working full-time in my practice upstairs at the clinic. And then one thing led to another, and I started writing for a local magazine and helping out with workshops and different things. As these things do happen, it just happens one step at a time. A lot of my life has not been planned. Most of my life has not been planned, and any time I did try and plan anything, something else came in and led me somewhere else. So I've learned just to, for the most part, let go of the reins and surrender to the flow of what's happening. And that's largely how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. I left the clinic eventually and then started doing intuitive readings and guidance on the phone. And then just a few months ago I stopped doing that as well, and I'm now doing the e-video readings that many of you are familiar with, and they're doing very well, quite a waiting list for those. So they're obviously reaching people, and that's what pleases me most. And I'm based at home now in my office, and again it's been one step at a time, and now I'm writing a book and I enjoy writing my blogs, and I'm an intuitive energy artist as well. So that's how I got to here. And I'm sure, you know, if we were sitting in a coffee shop together and we had longer to chat, I'd be able to learn about you, but I'd also be able to fill you in on some more of the details. But that's the quick version of how I ended up doing what I'm doing now.